Lecture 3, Week 3, will cover three topics: biomolecules of life, which is from Concepts of Biology textbook, section 2.3, digestion from Concepts of Biology textbook, section 16.2, and nutrition. And you'll find information on nutrition in the second edition biology book. Both, of course, textbooks are free online. I have a few other images and sources from other lectures that I've given. So we'll get started. The biomolecules of life. They're also known as macromolecules. Macro is the prefix for big molecules. Chapter 2 will look at how matter is made up of atoms. And we really just looked at how atoms came together to form small molecules like water and salt, table salt, sodium chloride. Here we're going to look how carbon forms a framework for these macromolecules. We call them organic molecules. And so we'll begin with describing the ways in which carbon is critical to life and describe the three of the four major biological molecules of life. Now for this particular video, I will go over just the three biological molecules, the macromolecules of life. The four macromolecules of life or biomolecules are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, but we'll only cover carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins for this lecture. Carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars and complex sugars. Simple sugars are also called monosaccharides. So here we have glucose, galactose, fructose. They're all one subunit or one monomer. When linked together, they form more complex sugars. So if you link two monosaccharides together, you get disaccharide. Di is the prefix for two, so two sugars. And that's an example of maltose and sucrose. If you linked multiple monosaccharides, we get polysaccharides. Poly is the prefix for many. So we get many subunits of sugar molecules. That's what we call complex sugars. So polysaccharides, complex carbohydrates, we have starch, glycogen, cellulose, and chitin. So for starch, this is the stored form of energy for plants. Glycogen is the stored form of energy for mammals like ourselves. So these are sugar molecules, complex sugar, and they'll act as a source of energy for the organism, whether it's a plant or us. Cellulose is a complex carbohydrate as well. It makes up the structural component of plants. And so it is actually a complex polysaccharide that we cannot digest. So cellulose that makes up the cell wall of plant cells makes up what we know as fiber in our diet. And then the fourth polysaccharide or complex carbohydrate is chitin, which makes up the exoskeleton of insects. The next macromolecule is our lipids. Lipids, we know them more commonly as fats, have the defining characteristic that they do not mix with water. They are molecules that are hydrophobic, unable to mix with water. What are the functions of lipids? Think about the fats that you consume. Think about the fats that you find in your body. So we have energy storage. Fat is stored energy in our body. Cushion, if you looked at a kidney, or any kidney, whether it's chicken kidney or your kidneys, they are surrounded by fat, and this acts as a protective covering and cushion around your internal organs. Insulation, membrane structure, you'll find lipids making up the structure of cell membranes. Water storage, toxic storage. So if, for example, in our body, if the liver does not know how to break down a synthetic molecule, it will send it off and store it in fat cells. And then they also act as a chemical messenger. Under the category of lipids, we have particular hormones, more specifically reproductive hormones, that are acting as chemical messengers. And so, as you can see here, lipids have a wide variety of functions: energy storage, insulation, membrane structure, chemical messengers. These are all very important functions, in order to maintain homeostasis in an organism. Types of fat. We could break them down into the fats that we know as and we consume, saturated fats, unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats, we have margarine, trans fats, omega-3 fats, and plant oils. Saturated fats are the fat you find in marbled meat, fat you find in dairy and cheese, etc. Now, some of the oils could be made into uh, solid at room temperature by a method of hydrogenation. And hydrogenation means they add hydrogen to the oil, and that converts unsaturated fats to saturated fats, makes liquefats solid at room temperature, and then creates trans fats, which are not particularly healthy for you. Fats include phospholipids. Phospholipids are made up of two fatty acids. These are the fatty acid tails, and these are carbon-hydrogen bonds. And so they have hydrophobic lipid tails, hydrophobic properties. They repel water. The phosphate head is actually hydrophilic. It likes water. And the glycerol group. The membrane of cells are composed of phospholipids. So we have a cell membrane. If we took a piece of that cell membrane and expanded it, we would see that it is made up of two layers of phospholipids. So the structure you see in the image, but then two layers facing each other. We'll talk about the plasma membrane later on, but that makes up the component of the cell membrane, phospholipids, and is under the category of lipids. So every cell in your body has these phospholipids making up that cell membrane. Proteins, the next biomolecule, is a diverse group of biological molecules composed of monomers. It's called amino acids. So we have one amino acid here. You link amino acids together and you get a protein. So one amino acid, you link several amino acids, you get protein, or also called a polypeptide. So the monomer is the amino acid, the polymer is the protein. And proteins are very important. They make up more than 50% of dry weight of most cells. So you could see there that it's a major component of cells, and thus it will be a major component of your own body. They're instrumental in almost everything we do. If you think about where proteins are found, you'll see that they have a variety of different functions. So what are these functions? We have structural proteins. Structural proteins include your hair, which is made up of protein, the horns of an animal, or your nails, which are protein. The top layer of your skin is basically protein. You've all heard it's dead layers of skin. Well, those dead layers of skin, the skin cells before dying, they formed a meshwork of proteins linked together. And so it acts as a protective layer of your skin, of your body. So structural proteins, they're also helping with the integrity of the cell membrane and the structure of the cell, every individual cell. We have proteins that are providing that cytoskeleton. Cyto means cell, skeleton, you know what that means. So it's a structural component down to the cellular level. We have storage proteins. We have provides amino acids for growth. And so here we have an egg, and the albumin in the egg, that's the white part of the egg, will act as a stored protein nutrient source. Contractile proteins, your muscles, you know, you've heard they're protein, right? If you're going to be working out, you drink protein drinks. That's because you want the protein subunits, or I should say raw material, to build proteins in the muscle cells that allow for contraction. And so contractile proteins help with movement. Transport proteins, a lot of items in your body need to be transported via the blood system. So we have proteins that carry different nutrients, different substances throughout the body. And then we have enzymes. Enzymes are help chemical reactions occur faster than they would naturally occur. So they are very important in chemical reactions. Proteins have different structural forms. So just a chain of amino acids makes a polypeptide or protein, but it's actually, to be more exact, it's a non-functional protein. It does not have a function unless it's folded up into its final shape. So we have amino acid chain that's called the primary protein structure. This primary protein structure, which is just a chain of amino acids, will bend into beta pleated sheets or curl into alpha helixes. That's known as the secondary protein structure. Then these beta pleated sheets and alpha helixes will basically bundle together into a three-dimensional ball or form. This is the tertiary protein structure. And when you have multiple polypeptides coming together that are already in the tertiary structure, you get what we know as a quaternary protein structure. It is in this tertiary and quaternary protein structure that the protein actually has a function. And it's the way it looks, the structure, that will lend to its function. For example, here we have hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is an abundant protein in all RBCs. So there's over 1 billion hemoglobin protein molecules in each RBC in your body, in each RBC. This protein is very important because it helps carry oxygen, which carrying oxygen is the function of red blood cells. So we have here normal hemoglobin, we have amino acid sequence, and folds once it gets from primary structure to the quaternary structure, we have normal peptide, and then we have normal red blood cell with its characteristic shape, nice smooth oval, smooth margin oval with an indentation right in the middle. However, when we get sickle cell hemoglobin, we have an amino acid sequence. There's one error, I'm not sure if you can see it here, but there's one little red dot. That means that one amino acid was placed in error. And so this protein, because of that one error, ends up folding incorrectly. So we have normal protein up here and then sickle cell polypeptide down below. This protein that has folded incorrectly, if you think about 1 billion of these proteins folded incorrectly, will lead to the sickle cell red blood cell that you see on the right. So from having a nice round circular shape with an indentation in the middle to increase surface area, we have something that looks like a sickle. And so it's crescent shaped. And as you can see, structure lends to function. We talked about that being a theme in biology. If the structure is not adequate, it's not how naturally it's supposed to be, then the function will also be altered. And for sickle red blood cells, they're more fragile. They have less surface area, so they're going to be carrying less oxygen. They're going to break easily, and they're actually going to clump up and form clots in blood vessels. So that's going to cause a lot of pain to individuals with sickle cell disease. So protein, very important structural component of cells. They have lots of different functions. In this example, we have oxygen carrying capabilities. Proteins are important in the human body. That's one of the macromolecules of life. We saw that carbohydrates were also very important. Lipids were very important. These are biological molecules. They play a role in our body, and all three of these molecules, biomolecules or macromolecules, they're also known as nutrient molecules. Nutrient molecules because they could, in their structure, there is energy in the way they're structured, and this energy could be extracted or transferred to another energy molecule, ATP. And hence, from this unit, we go into digestion and nutrition. So we'll see how these molecules serve as nutrient molecules. And we'll cover this a little bit better in section 16.2, the digestive system, where we'll cover the process of digestion and absorption, explain the specialized function of the organs involved in processing food in the body, describe ways in which organs work together to digest food, describe the essential nutrients required for cellular function. So we just went over the biomolecules. Those are essential nutrients. Those are nutrients that cannot be synthesized by the animal body. Describe how excess carbohydrates and energy are stored. So we'll cover this in the next video.